Stanley Muthama. Now, to discuss these and much more with me in studio, I have Fred Ouda, who is the Kisumu Central Member of Parliament. Also have Mark Bichachi, who's a political communication strategist, as well as Javas Bigambo, who is now with me in studio. He's a governance expert. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Now, before we start our discussion tonight, allow me to play that soundbite from the troubled former Member of Parliament. I think I'm allowed to say that. Former Member of Parliament of Nandi Hills, Alfred Keter.
Nataka muelewe, sisi safari imeanza siku ya leo. Najua hata mambo ni mengi, hata sio majabu sasa tuambiwe sisi tumefukuzwa Jubilee ama tuambie mengi. Unasikia? Unasikia? Hata Jubilee nitafukuzwa. Nataka musikie. Hata tayari najua sitapewa hiyo, lakini sisemi kitu saizi. Sisi tutatangaza way forward na tutishiki hata kidogo na tutaendelea kwenda mbele.
Naturally, let me begin with a politician in studio, that is Kisumu Central Member of Parliament, Fred Ouda. Now, Fred, can you perhaps tell us if this is some sort of a good riddance for Jubilee? Because this is a man who has been very vocal. He has been talking ill about his own political party. And do you think he's being unfairly targeted, perhaps?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my host today. I want to say, probably today is the worst day for Jubilee. And I want to say that maybe today, the fire has just started in the palace. Because as you all know, the Nandi Hills Member of Parliament, Alfred Keter, who is also my very good friend, is not only outspoken, but is a man full of content, is a man who believes in what is right in this country, is a man who is ready to walk the correct path in this country. Unfortunately, Alfred Keter found himself in a house whereby, or rather in a bus whereby the driver and the conductor do not believe in the traffic rules of the road. Mm-hmm. And as you can see now, whatever has happened today is actually very sad to some of us because we believe that he was unfairly targeted. If you saw what happened to Kagogo Bowen, actually another friend of mine, and what has happened to Alfred Keter today, mm-hmm. You can easily see that who is actually the engineer, or rather the person behind all this. And if then this is the direction that the so-called engineers of such things want to take, or rather this is the path they want to take, my friend, I'm afraid Jubilee is in trouble.
And Honorable Fred, before I engage Mark Bichachi, I saw him, he had a bit of a difficulty hearing your view there. I'm going to update you, Mark, shortly. But for now, allow me to break some breaking news here. And we want to bring you some breaking news where Justice Joseph Ongutu, we're getting report, has passed on. Now, Justice Ongutu allegedly collapsed at a gym at Parkland Sports Club this evening and died there. Now, one of the latest cases the judge was handling is the case involving the Kenya Electricity Generating Company, KETRACO, and it has been regarded to be a very controversial case. And Justice Ongutu also ruled on a case between Nakumatt and its creditors last October, in which he granted all 90 creditors their insolvency petition for days to file, and he has given them 4 days to file responses to Nakumatt's application for the appointment of PKF's Peter Obondokai as the retail chain's administrator. Also in January, Justice Ongutu ordered PSU Director Dennis Itumbi 5 million shillings for illegal detention and arrest of alleged hacking of the ICC website in 2012. Also in September last year, Justice Ongutu ruled that since 2013, President Uhuru Kenyatta has been issuing title deeds in the coast without due process and rendered the titles null and void. According to the Ujamaa Africa, where he's listed as a board member, Justice Ongutu was promoted to the High Court of Kenya 2 years ago and has written several important Kenyan national policy briefs since that time. He chairs several important national oversight committees, including social welfare and judiciary review. Once again, reports reaching us now is that Justice Louis Ongutu of Milimani Law Court had collapsed and passed on at the Parkland Sports Club right here in Nairobi. And of course, condolences to all his family and friends. Now, let's continue with our debate in studio. Now, Mark, this is what Honorable Fred said of today's development, and he's saying that it's a bad day for Jubilee, and that the former Member of Parliament, Alfred Keter, is a man full of content. Do you agree with him?
The way Kenyan politicians treat justice with frivolity, bordering on the games of childish infants in kindergarten is quite laughable. I'd like to remind the Honorable Member of Parliament that he has a duty to uphold the rule of law and to uphold what is common sense. Let's not tie the judgment of a judge to the machinations of Jubilee. It would be quite laughable to think that the same party that wrote complaining about the judiciary to the Chief Justice would then be the same party which is able to somehow manipulate a case. The reality is, if Keter was elected on a platform where there are illegalities and irregularities, it does not mean anything for Jubilee, just the same way as the nullification of the election of Awiti in Homa Bay does not necessarily mean that NASA is on its way down. So let's not apply justice based on what we feel like. The truth of the matter is that there was evidence presented before the court. The evidence showed that Keter had election was marred with irregularities and illegalities, and on the same basis he was his election was nullified. So let's not pretend that that one particular judgment then is understood politically and the other one is judgment.
Let me give Fred the right of reply there before I come to you, Javas. Fred, you've heard what Mark is saying, that, you know, Alfred Keter should just go ahead and carry his own cross and should not blame the entire Jubilee party.
Mark is just being our usual Kenyan analyst, because looking at whatever has been bedeviling my friend Honorable Keter is not yet formal because we got right of appeal. You see, this is the same guy who vied for a seat in Parliament to become a chairman of a committee against his party's will, and he won. Then, a few days later, he's removed and he goes to court and is now taking on his party leadership concerning the same seat that he won. Then, secondly, this is a guy who some Kenyans go to as a leader in this country, and they have a problem to do with central bank. He decides to innocently take them to the central bank governor, and a few hours later, the same Keter is arrested. Now, a few days later, the same Keter, who actually got 28,000 votes against his opponent, who got 13,000 votes, a verdict is given, and Keter loses his seat. And we all know who Keter is, and Mark cannot pretend that Keter has always been a whopper with his party leadership.
Well said, Fred. Let me now engage Javas, and we're going to talk about what this ruling today means for the Rift Valley politics. And I'm sure, Fred, you'll agree with me that Mark, as a political analyst, also has a right to make his political views known. Now, Javas, what are you reading in today's development?
Well, first, it is unfortunate that the Honorable Keter has lost his seat by way of the court declaration or the court ruling. And it must be understood that any court ruling, whether it is for or against anyone, it is a legal writ which must be respected. Thank you. I have not brought myself to imagine even closely that any person whom the court rules against, then such could be a result of merely a witch hunt or whatsoever. Of course, the situations and circumstances bedeviling the Honorable Keter are very unique and quite unfortunate, and various questions would easily emerge. For example, looking at the clip that you played, when he even pronounced himself indicating that possibly they may even be expelled from Jubilee, etc., and even the issue of the central bank situation that he faced and being behind bars for the weekend, etc. It is a very unfortunate situation. Alfred Keter is a self-made, recalcitrant, and ambitious politician who has got a peculiar focus on the kind of politics that he wants to run. And because of that nature, he has found himself stepping on various important political tours. And because of that, he has been seen to be fighting the forces or the powers that be. Mm-hmm. That itself has put him in the whirlwind of politics in this country. Mm-hmm. And going by the court ruling today, unless, for example, he appeals and the appeal court also makes its own pronouncement, whether it upholds or otherwise, it's a different matter altogether. If he does not appeal, then we go to the ballot. You can actually expect that the Honorable Keter will find it challenging to go for that seat again. Whether he contests on the Jubilee seat, mm-hmm. you can be sure that by the way of pronouncements he has made in the recent weeks, he may not really be a darling of the Jubilee Party operatives.
Actually, he's on record saying that he's not quite sure whether he's going to get that Jubilee ticket there. Now, Fred, once again, from today's development, we've seen Keter accompanied by a number of members of parliament, including Moiben Member of Parliament, Silas Tereni, Yohana Ngeno, and some other MPs. What does this say about Rift Valley politics? Are we seeing some sort of a rift? And what does this mean for the 2022 politics?
Let me tell you, 2022 politics is a unique kind of scenario that you're going to have this time round. Because one thing you need to know is that in Rift Valley, they reason differently. And the fact that now you are seeing some leaders coming around like Silas Tiren, who is also my colleague in the Agriculture Committee, Kagogo Kaboen, Alfred Keter, and so many others who are silent because I talk to them when I'm in Parliament. There are so many of them who are still silent about what is happening, though they are not happy. I can tell you their party leader, or rather their deputy party leader, who is actually William Samoei Ruto, who is perceived to be the apparent heir to Uhuru Kenyatta, might find it difficult because this guy, here is a situation whereby you have somebody who is creating enemies. Each day he wakes up, he creates enemy. Today is Keter, tomorrow will be somebody else. And I can tell you, as the way these people are, the way Ruto is creating so many enemies around him, you should be ready that you put small things together, finally it will become a big thing. So going into 2022, I don't see Ruto getting automatic support from Rift Valley.
Mark, is there any reason for Jubilee to worry? Allow me to engage Mark now. Mark, is there any reason for Jubilee to worry from today's development?
You know, it's very interesting that when you begin counting a list and you start with Alfred Keter and you can't mention the other enemy, it tells you they're trying to push an agenda that's not there. Now let's understand the dynamics of 2022. Let's not forget there's an entity called KANU that has a hand to play within Rift Valley politics. And let's not forget that in both 2013 and in 2017, and in between there was a by-election in Kericho as well, where the supremacy of one William Ruto was pitted against the supremacy of Gideon Moi, and that's what really this is about. If you're going to talk about succession politics, Rift Valley politics, you've got to talk about these two names, and history has a tendency of repeating itself. And let's look at it. If Ruto has won 3 times out of 3 bouts, what is the probability that he will lose the most important one? The question that you need to ask yourself is, does Gideon Moi have the capacity to master the Rift Valley vote to bolster a run in 2022? Right now, you have to say that William Ruto is in the lead in that particular race.
Jarvis, first of all, do you believe that today's development is going to cause split in the Rift Valley politics?
It is too early in the day to make such a projection in a prophetic way. And because of the early nature of these happenings, we know very well that a day in politics is far too long. These 4.5 years before the election, if such happens, then we've got so much that's going to happen. Lots and lots of political battle formations are going to take place. Yes, we have got individuals that we can say are earmarked as men with ambition, men with a longing, whose eye is on the prize of the presidential election. Remember, too, that too many other political happenings may happen in the course of this 5-year period. One of them could be a very important referendum that could restructure the executive nature of our constitution, etc., which will introduce some other dynamics or variables within our political machinations. So the events of today alone are not sufficient for us to make a firm and forthright declaration that they are obviously and directly leading to the manner of political battle formations that will lead to the successes or wins in the 2022 presidential election victories.
I'm sure Fred will disagree with this, but Fred, you know, despite his open defiance, that is the MP in question, that is Alfred Keter, he has managed to win his seat despite, you know, the Jubilee's wave in Rift Valley. Perhaps, do you think there's a man who has an ability to change tides there, and who is out to benefit? Because we're seeing NASA, they also have their own loyalty problems within their own outfit. Gideon Moy there, Mark has said this is the only individual who's going to give DP Ruto, you know, some sort of a threat in Rift Valley. Who do you think is going to benefit the most out of this development?
Of course, we all know is we lose when it comes to all this. That is William Ruto. That one I can assure you. Now, who will gain the most? Definitely Gideon Moy stand to gain, and NASA stand to gain, as much as we've got our own problems.
So you're not quite sure who's going to win, but you definitely know who's going to lose. That's
I'm not so sure between NASA and Gideon Moy who is going to win, because one of them, Gideon Moy, might win out of this, and same to NASA. But I know that DP William Ruto will definitely lose when it comes to these small battles. But let me say something. Going into 2022, I can tell my fellow friends there and my analysts there that they should know that as much as it may look so close to DP William Ruto to become president of the Republic of Kenya, I can also assure them that it is also too far. And I agree with the other analysts who have said that it is too early in the day to say this. But going by the things I'm seeing in Rift Valley, by the events, by the occasions and everything that is being created, and especially when it comes to the issues of Alfred Keter and the rest, I can assure you, my friend, the kind of rebellion that is going to rise in Rift Valley, I'm telling you, it will be unstoppable, and Ruto will just realize when the entire house is on fire. And that one I can assure you.
Mark, I'd like to hear your view on this. Fred says he's quite sure who's going to lose, and you know, with regards to what happened today, but he's not quite sure who's going to benefit out of it.
I am amused because if there's one thing the good member of parliament should remember is that William Ruto is a student of Daniel Tolentich Arap Moi. He's a student of Raila Odinga. He's a student of Mwai Kibaki. And let me tell you something. The worst thing you can ever do in any challenge is underestimate your opponent. And let me tell you the truth. Like William Ruto or not, he's a factor you cannot count out. Just the same way that Raila Odinga has been an enigma and we cannot count him out of any particular election, including 2022. You cannot count out an 80-year-old Raila Odinga in 2022. You cannot count out a 50-year-old William Ruto in 2022. It would be a big, big mistake. If you're a strategist and you're writing a strategy and you're counting out William Ruto, you're making a big mistake. And let me tell you, there have been rumors many times of a rebellion. In fact, even last year's election, there was a rumor of a rebellion. There was a fifth principal, let's not forget, of Chama Shinani, who promised to deliver this rebellious vote for NASA, and it did not happen. And let me tell you, that formula does not work. Do not count William Ruto out. And let me tell you the truth. He is right when he assesses that William Ruto is within a whisker of the presidency.
Jarvis?
Well, before the Union Jack was lowered in 1960, before independence, Jomo Kenyatta had been undermined by the whites. And Jaramogi said, you know, we cannot have independence as a nation until Jomo Kenyatta is released. After that, upon the demise of Jomo Kenyatta, many undermined Daniel Arap Moi. And we saw that he ruled a nation for 24 years. Then after that, when Daniel Arap Moi was leaving his office, we know very well that rebellion made William Ruto. And William Ruto is a Nandi. The spirit and nature of the Nandi community and the adherents is a spirit of rebellion. From the times of Koitalel Arap Samoei, that is the kind of spirit that is reigning supreme in Alfred Keter and other individuals in his legion. The thing is this, he is going to be a very important pillar in the politics of the Rift Valley. he cannot be wished away. But what is important is how he's going to either secure or lose his seat through this by-election. That will be very important. And also the manner in which the Honorable Deputy President is going to graciously handle the nature of rebellion within the Rift Valley. The other thing is this. It will also be very sad for any person who is looking at the 2022 election to say, wish away or imagine that Gideon Moi is not going to be a strong contender. Gideon Moi is an individual with the wherewithal. He just needs to be polished up, spruced up to have that presidential acumen, the nature that, the manner that will have him as a very competitive individual on the political scene. Remember that he's a politician already. He's been a senator already. Before that, he was a member of parliament. The dynamics could be very different. Politicians have got very different personalities. It will be very different to say that by way of the manner in which an individual plays his politics, then he stands no chance to cause a whirlwind in the 2022 presidential election. But what should be a point of focus right now is that we as a people, we as a nation, should not imagine that by way of an arm of government, the judiciary, through the courts, making their own declarations about matters of election, that so much should be read into it. Remember, even from the position that the Honorable Member of Parliament is speaking as NASA, they have been advocating or championing or speaking about matters of electoral justice. If a court of law has ruled in such a manner that an election was not conducted in a constitutional manner, in a manner that was fair, true, and just, then it's proper for us, in the spirit of pursuit of electoral justice, to see to it that we stand with what is true, what is necessary, and what will guarantee electoral justice in this country.
Yes, and we're almost out of time. Now, Fred, I'd like to hear your view on this, as much as you're going to react to what Mark said, that it's quite early to underestimate an individual like the Deputy President. Perhaps what does, the ruling we're seeing from the courts, most members of Parliament perhaps are going to be subjected to a by-election. What does this ruling say about, the just concluded elections?
Matters judiciary. I want to say, I'm not saying that judiciary is being muzzled by the executive. Of course, looking at the things and the way it is, now we are done with Uhuru Kenyatta. Now we're only dealing with William Ruto. And as you can see, the people who are appointed, the Judicial Service Commission, as you can see, people like Davis Chirchir. Now, who is Davis Chirchir, honestly? The other day, this guy who has a case with the Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority and is now being brought to the judiciary. That tells you a lot, that these guys, their intention is not good when it comes to judiciary. And very soon, Maraga will be gone. And another justice will be appointed there. You don't know why will this guy be brought to the bench? Because looking at the entire issue and the way the Kateri issue has been handled, my friend, a lot is left to be desired, honestly speaking. And my fellow analysts there, there's one who was talked about Gideon Moi. I'm not wishing away William Ruto. I said William Ruto may look so near, but again, he's too far from this thing. And that's why you cannot wish somebody like Gideon Moi away from the 2022 politics and say that maybe he's a weakling and he cannot take on William Ruto. What if you are presented with a scenario like the 2002 scenario? Mwai Kibaki versus Uhuru Kenyatta. What if it is William Ruto versus Gideon Moi? What will happen?
And that begs the question, Mark, are we going to see some sort of reemergence of what many political analysts used to refer to as silent war in Rift Valley, not actual war, political war between Gideon Moi and Deputy President William Ruto? Bearing in mind today's development, because we're seeing a couple of rebel members of parliament from the Rift Valley.
Let's understand something, and this is what I'm finding very strange. How the electoral loss, petition loss of Alfred Keter is connected to succession. Justice cannot be used as a political tool. Be that as it may, let's understand something. That 2022 and politics by its nature is a competitive game. And therefore, it is my expectation that people as far-flung as Joho, Oparanya, Anyang' Nyong'o, Senator Orengo, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, all these people in whichever political formation are people who are gunning for power in 2022. There will be a lot of alignments, realignments, and competitions, but guess what? That is the flavor and the nature of multi-party democracy that we embraced. And therefore, 2022 is not a question, it's not a crime to run for presidency, and neither is it a crime to run against anyone for whatever position on this earth. And therefore, we need to get to the point where we mature as Kenyans and understand that whoever runs in 2022, what we need to be concerned about is not who they are, it is what they will do for this particular nation. And we really need to change our conversations from looking at everything through the lens of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and the friend of my friend is my friend. It does not work like that. NASA needs to focus, and the good legislator needs to focus on a house of cards that is crumbling. Will they have a proper deck come 2022? That's what NASA needs to do.
Well said. Javas, I'll give you this last word. Do you think it's a bit premature to discuss, succession politics?
Well, I wouldn't speak about prematurity of the same, because the moment an election ends, any strategic politician will think about the next battle, even though we say that nationalists should always think about how to improve the lives of a nation. But we know very well that a shrewd politician will start working the works and the woodworks to see that they work through whatever circumstances they are in, the quagmire that can assure the next victory. Now, thing is this. Power, by its nature, is what you have and how you use it, and also what your enemy perceives you to have, and how you can use it either to scare off, to intimidate, or to wow your enemy. When you look at the individuals that have got their sights trained on the presidency in 2022, yes, Gideon Moi there. Yes, William Ruto there. Yes, Musalia Mudavadi there. Yes, possibly even Kalonzo Musyoka there, though he's much more weakened after the 2017 election. You realize that we are going to have a team of men and possibly a woman who may rise, but the arithmetic may be very different. What we need is to make sure that are we having social justice in this country? Are we having electoral justice in this country? Are we having an egalitarian system that uplifts the economic situations and fortunes of the people in this country? Today, each of these men needs to be recalibrated, rebranded, and repositioned if at all they want to find favor in the eyes of the common citizen in this country. Because each, whether you look at Honorable Gideon Moi or Honorable William Ruto or Honorable Musalia Mudavadi or even Kalonzo Musyoka or even Raila Odinga, they have got certain limitations that if they were to polish up those edges, then they would have very competitive edges towards 2022.
Yes, and I think they have about, 4 years to do exactly that. Thank you very much, Javas Bigambo, for your input. He's a governance expert. Mark Bichachi, political analyst, as well as Honorable Fred Ouda, Member of Parliament, Kisumu Central. And earlier